So with King Bast, you've never been here before. Not everyone wants to talk, I think, which is fine. So if you just want to say hello in the text chat or something to say that you can hear us, that'd be nice. We have Stephen too, who hopefully is going to talk, because we're going to actually go through his gaming stuff. We have Salman. Hi, Salman. I don't think Salman's going to talk because he's got a very strong accent, but his written English is perfect, so I'll try and keep an eye on the text chat.
I'm going to shut my mic off so it won't be bugging people.
Hi, Andy. Nice to see you.
Hello.
Was that
yes,
you, Andy?
This is the first time, hoping to pick up some tips.
Mm-hmm. Where are you based, Andy?
I split my time between Alberta, Canada, and currently I'm in Tampa, Florida. Sort of half a year each place.
Mm-hmm. Are you born in Canada or born in America?
Born in Germany.
Oh, okay, right. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the first person who was born in mainland Europe, I think, who's been in the chat.
Yes, born in Germany, went to Canada when I was 3, spent most of my time there, and now pretty well retired, and that's why I spend half my time in Florida when it's winter up in Canada.
Yeah, I don't blame you. So Rochelle and I have just been in Chicago. She still is, and it's minus 17°C. What's that in Fahrenheit, Rochelle? Minus something?
That's about 5
You're better at it than me.
That's about 5 degrees Fahrenheit, I think.
It's warm now, for now.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people here. It's pretty good. I'm just thinking, is there anyone I invited who isn't here? A couple of people, but I don't think there's anyone who said they were actually going to come who isn't here. Okay, so we're just waiting for 1:30 to come along, and then we'll start. Jacob, could you take more control this time with the agenda? Just because I'm going to be coughing. I'm not too bad right now, but I will be.
Okay. You want us to go ahead and get started?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. This is our 8th weekly community chat. It looks like on the agenda, Chris has listed first what we're working on. So, Chris, you said somebody, at least 1 or 2 people here, wanted to talk about their sites.
Well, I know Jason had something to talk about, and I know Stephen will probably be talking quite a lot about what he's doing. So we should probably talk to Stephen a little bit later on.
Okay. So, Jason, what do you have going on?
More my long-term project list. I've got a couple of what I would consider maybe fringe use cases for using Composr. On my local network, I have some Internet of Things devices, web services, and servers that are running for my DVR and my home automation server.
Mm-hmm. Oh, cool. What have you got automated in your home? I'm intrigued.
And what I'd like to do is, because all these are remotely accessible over the internet, so they've all got access through the router. What I'd like to do is use Composr as a proxy and use it as the front end. It'll give me a dashboard to display data from all these devices and services, and then give me a proxy so that I can control these through Composr without having to actually access the devices or the services themselves.
That's really fun. So can you tell us a bit about what specifically you've automated or what you're automating?
I've got a couple of IP webcams. I've got a Sage TV DVR software and HomeSeer home automation. Each one of them has its own web server built in. And what I can do is I can bring in different components of these web interfaces on these other devices and display them through Composr. That'll let me access my IP webcams. I can manipulate things on the DVR. I can schedule things to record remotely. And I can do all that and use Composr as sort of the main security.
That's cool. I've got this is completely random. I've said this to Rochelle. Rochelle's my wife, by the way. I really want a home where the curtains are automated, so I don't have to draw the curtains every day. Okay, that's all I wanted to say there. Okay, that's cool.
One of the other things that I want to do is similar to that. One of my hobbies is robotics. As I'm getting into building some bigger robots, what I can do is I can use Composr, and you have Composr give me sort of like a dashboard type of an interface. I can use a tablet, and I can get real-time data back from the robot over a tablet using Composr and a web server. And then similar, I can use it as a proxy, and use the proxy to initiate different control software and execute commands and macros on the robot to make it perform various functions.
That's really cool.
That's all I got.
Okay.
Cool. I've got a bad habit of talking too much, so Jacob, don't let me just accidentally keep on taking over the chat.
Well, you wrote the agenda anyway. So you said you want to wait a little bit until we have Stephen talk?
You decide.
Okay. I mean, we're talking about people's sites now. Stephen, have we seen him before, or is this the first time he's been to the chat?
It's the first time Stephen's here.
Okay.
Stephen, can you hear us? And
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Hey there.
What sites are you working on with Composr?
I'm not actually working on any at the moment, but what I was intrigued about, so for a job, I develop virtual reality products for clients through a company I work through, and I also develop games, Unity-based games as a hobby. Now, for our client-side stuff, and for the most part, Unity games in general, if you want to communicate with a backend to, say, store high scores or other user data, you either have to use a system of proprietary stuff. So if you've made for the Vive, we use Steam VR. So normally we have to interact with Steam's high score system, which can be a pain in the ass. Or we have to use a third-party system like DreamSparks, which have their own stuff which you have to pay an exorbitant amount of money for. Or at work, we've got some in-house Laravel developers, and we get them to create custom endpoints. Now, what I wanted to do was instead of on my own projects have to use stuff that's third-party and expensive, was use Composr and link it in with Unity to store player data and high scores and provide downloads and streaming content and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, which is what led me to the forums and ask about whether anything was in there, and if not, then that's where I'd go. And I haven't really, to be fair, gotten started beyond setting up some basic stuff within Unity to then work with Chris to see where we can go from there. If that all makes any sense to everyone?
I think it makes sense. I'm pretty foggy on the actual technologies involved. So, Unity is a game engine,
Yes,
and it presumably provides client and server components in the engine.
yes, it does.
So it's a bit like Unreal or ID Engine or something like that.
Yes, and the core scripting language that we use is C# through Microsoft Visual Studio.
Okay.
So the backend, at the moment, the current backend is compatible with .NET 2.0 and .NET 3.5, sort of somewhere in between there. Unity are working towards more recent support, which I'm really hoping for because there's a lot of nice features in the newer .NET. They also have their built-in web request. They call it Unity Web Request class, which I can give it a URL, and there's also I can receive binary data from it, but we use it at work mainly to receive JSON strings, which we can then pass and then rebuild objects within the game engine from the JSON. And conversely, we can send back to the web server JSON strings. And there's a few other web request sort of things that we can do that I've not explored much, but I believe we can do file uploads through put requests and send form data through.
Yeah, cool.
As well. So normally when I work with the developers at my work, they build me an endpoint, give me a URL and the JSON strings from that in a properly headed JSON format. and then I'll handle it from there. And they've built the objects that they send to me based on the specifications I've given them. Which, when you're getting somebody to build a custom backend can be a while. You don't get all the bells and whistles that I like in Composr. So yeah, that's where I want to start. I've been busy developing other systems within my games and stuff lately, so I haven't concentrated much on there beyond creating a sample project that can show what I get in Unity when I send a rug request. Because Unity doesn't pass the HTML at all. I will get raw HTML strings. So my initial problem with Composr will be I can't pass what it sends to me initially. I need plain text.
Okay. We can probably do something like that. Now we can probably kind of show you how to pass some data out of Composr with a script.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Again, I'm doing my habit of kind of taking over the chat a bit here. So, Jacob, you're in charge of the agenda. Do you want to maybe go into that a bit later? Because it's going to be pretty in depth, and we maybe do some other agenda items first.
Well, the agenda, aside from what we're working on, just had community questions listed. So there's nothing else that you had planned for us to talk about.
There was talk about the design actually. The new site design.
That was all right. Well, you put that in the last week's chat. It wasn't in the newest thread. But so if everyone, does anyone else have websites that they're working on they'd like to mention? All right, not hearing anything. So on the Composr forums the other week, Chris posted a screenshot of a new Composr homepage. So we can kind of talk about that. Let me look that up in last week's thread here. So yeah, if everyone's got the screenshot pulled up, I think Chris was wanting some feedback. We got some in the forum already. So what do we think of that new homepage?
Oh, by the way, hi Robbie. I can see you here. But I don't know if you've got a working microphone now. If you don't, you can just say hi in the text chat.
Personally, I think the new design looks really nice, especially compared to the current design. How much? I guess it took quite a bit of work. This is a Composr website still, I assume. It's still running on Composr.
Oh, yeah.
You had to probably change a whole lot to make it look like that from the default Composr install, didn't you?
Well, just to be clear right now, this is, I'm not sure what it's done in, but it's just a static image, so it's not actually built yet.
Right. Okay, so this isn't actually a screenshot. This is just mock-up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it might be done in Adobe something. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Ad designer, the OC Products designer has done it. Yeah, so this will be built as a responsive template for Composr when it will be done. Our designer will build the HTML and CSS, and probably me or maybe Salman will actually turn that into a theme.
Do you know anything about the fonts that they selected? Why they selected those?
No, honestly.
Okay.
I can say that I said I wanted an interesting font.
Yeah.
Which is the font we've got at the top. I said something along the lines of we've got high pixel screens now, and we've got a large choice of open source fonts we can use. So that's at least for the large text, use something a bit more interesting than we've done in the past. But as for what actual font it is, I couldn't say.
Yeah, I was just wondering.
I do think. Sorry, go on.
Well, the Composr logo itself uses a sans serif font, and then like the menu uses serif fonts. That was what I was mainly. The headline font there looks really nice, and looks like a sans serif font, even though it's pretty stylized. But I think the serif fonts look a little bit like they're the most dated part of this new design. Most of this design looks very modern.
Yeah. So where are we using serif fonts?
The menu for one thing, the drop down menu at the top, and then also all of the news.
Maybe this is outside of my expertise. Does anyone know a bit more about fonts? Like what defines a serif versus sans serif? I mean, I know sans serif means it's sans of the serif.
Yeah. So serif means like Times New Roman or that kind of thing, where it's got extra little bits hanging off like the bottom of an A or the sides of a T. Like the D in download looks like there's a little bit that goes to the left. It's hard to tell with the. Oh, here we go. I can zoom in a little bit. Whereas if you look at if you look at the
I'm not
Composr logo itself, like the bottom of the M, they just cut off. There's not much of a stub on the top left of the M.
Yeah.
I'm not a font expert either, but
I'm not convinced it's a serif font, but I'm not going to say that for sure.
I mean, if you scroll down to the latest news and look at those, and tell me that's a sans serif font. I mean, just like the capital T tutorial video, the capital A. Like I said, if it was actual text, we could see what font it is, but since it's an image, it's a little hard to tell.
Yeah.
That was just one thing I noticed.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe we can make the font more interesting.
I mean, do you see where at the top, the menu, that font looks very different from the part that says Composr is a very flexible CMS with advanced social, interactive, and dynamic functionality. That is a much simpler font than you're using. The menu, that font has a lot more bells and whistles in the menu.
Yeah, okay.
It's a subjective thing.
Yeah, I don't know what to say. I'm gonna get Manoj to view this video, and we can then take on all the feedback. So I defer to everyone else's opinion and our designer's opinion, and I don't want to say much. So anyway, it's a good observation. I don't think I think a lot about fonts personally, and I probably should think more about them.
Is the idea that you're supposed to have similar styles on the menu? But I'm frozen.
Yeah. No, you're not frozen.
Okay, I was frozen on my end. So the idea is that you're supposed to have a similar font size style within the actual website, similar to what's on the menus. Like, that's better.
To be consistent with your styles, yeah, generally it would be. So we probably shouldn't have more than 2 different fonts here. Probably the headline font, and just choose one font for everything else.
I thought it would be like you're supposed to have simpler fonts for things that you're using more often. Like there's a lot more different types of things that you're saying on the menus than there is like on the actual page. Like, isn't that supposed to be fancier?
I suppose it's a matter of opinion, but usually I find when I'm going through amend sets with clients, they always say make all the fonts the same. So
I suppose it would depend on the site. Like if it's using like really, really fancy cursive, and then you had that on the menus. So it's only because it's rather simplistic that I think it would work. Is that accurate?
Right. I think you're saying we don't want to have too fancy curly fonts on the menus.
Well, I'm saying theoretically, if your main site had fancy cursive, that's way too fancy for the menus, but it might not be for the main site. But because it's rather simplistic, you might as well make that the same.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think the cursive works pretty well for a headline, but if you had too much content in cursive, it wouldn't work. So a lot of sites do have just really nice, big, fancy cursive fonts for the front page and nothing else, but they don't tend to convey a lot of content, those sites. It's just like a few words and lots of white space. So personally, I don't think we could just use a cursive font.
Well, I'm not even suggesting that your site should have cursive. I'm just saying theoretically.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well, aside from the fonts, anyone else have thoughts about this new design? It's quite different from what's there right now.
Yeah. One thing we've changed is there's very poor contrast on the forum topic block, the blue forum topic block at the bottom right, the blue headlines and the blue background. That's been corrected. Obviously, I'm quite happy with it because it's gone through a few amend sets by now. I don't think I've posted anything else than just one screenshot, but we do have a design for the mobile layout too, and we've got a few different slider designs. So I think in a few weeks' time, whenever we next do our next community chat, I can probably put forward a few more things for discussion, all the slides and so on. Yeah, actually, one thing you can't see in the screenshot is the bit kind of like the third block down where it says the GitHub commits and lines of codes and that's actually going to be animated. So when you scroll down, it's going to kind of have like a parallax effect on those mountains. It's going to kind of scroll around a bit. I think the text maybe is going to fade in and the flags are going to rise up. I saw something similar on another site and I thought it was really cool. So I just blatantly stole the idea, honestly, and told our designer to do it. I really like animated websites when you scroll down and stuff animates around.
I have just like one idea with the near the bottom, one of the blue boxes.
Mhm.
It might be picking, but the main headlines that are in the navy, you could say that there's not a big contrast. Like
No,
some people might have a hard time seeing it.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. It's
Okay.
very poor contrast. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's it comes up that kind of issue, and so definitely that's been resolved in the latest iteration. We have a few different iterations of the design, but each iteration is showing different slides at the moment. So I just kind of picked one to show off. So that one's resolved. It'll be a responsive design. So when you if you're on different device sizes, it'll look different. And it's flat design, so there aren't really any shadows here or gradients or anything like that. It's quite simple. It should look really good on a high definition screen. Oh, and another thing is the Composr CMS logo in the top left is going to that bar. The top bar is going to stick to the top of the window, and when you scroll down, the Composr CMS logo is going to collapse. So it's the same size as the rest of the bar. So it'll be like a reduced size logo. And that'll stick there, which will be a nice little effect. You see that quite a lot on sites now. If you want to know how that looks like, have a look at techcrunch.com. It'll be a bit like how they do it.
Well, it's overall very beautiful.
Thank you.
So I'm a little interested in, obviously, if this is just a mock-up, you wouldn't know yet, but how are you thinking the rest of the website's going to look? Is this just going to be an overhaul of the homepage? Or is this actually going to be a new design for the entire site? Because sometimes I've had other websites redesign their homepage, and then I've been disappointed when I click through to another page and it looks exactly like the old one. Like KDE redesigned their website, well, quote unquote, their website last year, but it was really just a new homepage, not a new website.
Yeah. We are doing the whole site,
Okay.
but we're not throwing everything out and starting again. So. We did a presentation where we went through every page and we basically listed the changes we've made to each page. So content is broadly going to stay the same, but the actual design around the content is going to change. And I'm hoping it's going to be fairly simple to implement, and that we're going to use our icons, which we've done for Composr version 11 in this design. So rather than doing a load of custom graphics for all the kind of subpage links, we'll be reusing icons. Let me explain that a bit more. So we've got the drop-down menus, but I kind of believe that if you're on a tablet, you shouldn't have to use drop-downs to get to anything. You should just be able to kind of scroll down to the bottom of the page and just click sublink icons to get to any subpages. So there's going to be a kind of a hierarchy of subpage links that you can get through the whole site using them. The features page is going to be redesigned quite significantly, I think. So currently it's a lot of text, and at least the plan is to make every... let me bring up the current site. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so the current features page, it's split into broad sections, so content types, and general features, forums and members, and so on. Then there are columns in each section relating to one particular aspect, so catalogs, galleries, calendar. Then there's lists of features for each item. What the plan is for each of these columns to become a slider. So catalogs would be a slider, and then everything about catalogs would be a slide on the slider. So there'd be a slide for flexible data control, and so on. And the actual images for the slide would actually show off the feature. So ultimately, the idea is we want to show the features off with screenshots rather than lots of lists, because most people don't like to read a lot of information. And it's always been a complaint that it's kind of hard to see what Composr is actually like from the features page. People like to see more screenshots. So on the final page, it's probably going to be about 100 screenshots in sliders.
Chris, one thing that I would like to see, and that is on the search box up at the top,
Mhm.
that you don't have to slide over with the mouse to click this to the search, that you can press the enter key.
Yeah, does that not work at the moment? Excuse me.
It doesn't for me, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't work for other people. So
If it doesn't work right now, it's an oversight, and I'll believe you that that's an oversight. So let me just write that down. So I'll take a look at that. You can probably fix that on the current site.
Are you talking
Since
on
most
the
people-
on the current Composr website?
yes,
I'm able to search with
you know,
energy.
you're sitting there typing your search word, and I have a tendency to want to hit the carriage return or enter key, and then it doesn't do anything. So, I got to move over and click it with a mouse.
Yeah. What browser do you use, Bob?
Say again.
What web browser do you use?
Firefox mostly.
Yeah, it might be an issue just on Firefox, so just testing. Yeah, because it seems to work for me on Chrome Press again.
Okay.
Yeah, it works for me on Firefox here on Linux.
It might also be, I can't quite remember, but I think maybe we've got a different implementation of search for the tutorials. So let me test on here. It's working for me. I don't know. I haven't never looked at that myself. Maybe there's something to be fixed.
I'm on a Windows-based system too, so.
I've only tested from Windows.
All right. Any other thoughts about the new design from anyone?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can hear somebody.
I think that can you look at the text below the heading? Composr is a very flexible CMS with advanced social interactive, etc.
What are you saying about the text, Salman?
I think the drop shadow needs to be more consistent across the. There is, for example, the blue box in the near the footer, but and the text there has no drop shadow. Yeah,
that's a good point. I didn't actually even notice the drop shadow, to be honest, but you're right, there is one. We could, Simon, can I just stop you there? Do you think there even should be a drop shadow given its flat design? Does that break that design philosophy?
Right. And I think the latest news in the latest news section, the heading needs to be a bit larger, saying the latest news. This is because the content.
Oh yeah, I see what you're saying.
And in the news items, the for the description text, the line height needs to be a little less. It's a bit too much right now.
That's good points. Yeah, certainly latest news as a maybe a level 2 heading shouldn't be smaller than the maybe level 3 headings inside the boxes. So that is a good point. Yeah.
Okay.
Speaking about the drop shadows, Chris, I personally think that drop shadows complement, even though we call them quote-unquote flat designs, when you're talking about a gradient being not flat, that's kind of different from a drop shadow. When you've got lots of big things on the page and spanning most of the screen, the drop shadows can kind of help differentiate different parts of the page, where before you would have had different gradients or things to separate them. I think drop shadows can be useful. I don't think that makes it look less modern at all.
Yeah. Also, when there's an image behind something that gives it a bit of separation from the image, just to help. In an earlier iteration, there was a contrast problem between that background and foreground text. So maybe the drop shadows is part of fixing that. I don't have any opinion about drop shadows. I might get Salman to directly talk to designer Nudge on that. Give his input. It's beyond me.
Okay. Yeah. Any other thoughts about it? Not hearing anything. Chris, let me just grab one thing. So on this page, you can see this was sort of supposed to be a modern looking page, and I used drop shadows between different elements that span the entire page just to separate them. You've probably seen this page before, but you can see at the bottom of the image at the top and at the top of the image below that, it sort of sets out that text section and makes it feel like it's inlaid into the page a little bit. It gives it some depth.
Just bear with me. What am I looking at exactly? So it's
So you see
Northern Street Technology. Yeah.
The big header and then 2 paragraphs of text on the screen, right? Near the top.
So join the nerd top is the header, then
Right.
Nerd on the Street, mate.
So you see where there's a shadow at the top of that section beneath that image, and there's also a shadow at the bottom of that section that's really attached to the image below it. So what that does, right, it makes it feel like that section of text is ingrained into the page and gives it some depth rather than just being static and everything on the same level.
Okay.
That's pretty popular to do when you're doing that. You know, the new Composr page, the screenshot you've got one color going across the entire screen, and then you've got another section that goes across the entire screen. Box shadows are used a lot on that kind of website to give some additional separation between those sections.
Okay.
All right. Unless anyone else has anything to say about the new design, then I guess we can move on to community questions. So I don't know if does anyone else have any other questions other than the programming things for. Oh, go ahead.
I think there are some issues with white space. There needs to be more white space in some sections, and there is a lot of it in some sections. But near the word style, the main heading, the word style content management system for next generation websites, it says there needs to be some white space above and below it.
Yeah.
Extra white space, and I don't know if that's a button, and that says open source download without limits.
Yeah, it does look a bit buttony and linky, but I don't think it is meant to be a button.
It has squared corners, but in the testimonial section near the footer, the send testimonials button has rounded corners. That also needs to be more consistent.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
yeah.
I'm not sure of the stats, but I think in 2018 there are a lot more bigger monitors being used. So the design could have been a bit more. It's 1352 pixels wide. It could have been like 1400 or 1600. But that's
okay.
not right, I guess.
Yeah, I think I might just put you in charge of the design stuff.
Yeah, Chris, that's a good point. How does especially the stats section, how does that scale with larger monitors? Would that have extra white space just on the left and right, or do those things get farther apart from each other?
Right, so I think it would be vector-based. It would be probably an animated SVG, so it would stretch out, essentially.
Okay.
Jacob says you're having bandwidth issues again, and you've frozen.
Me?
Yeah, at least for me, anyway.
It's good for me.
I think we can ignore the bandwidth issue messages.
Yeah, you're back for me and now, anyway.
Okay. Any other input on that new website design? Okay. Well, Chris, the next section is community questions. If anyone has any other questions, feel free to pipe in, but I think Chris was going to do some programming, or at least looking into things for Steven's question.
Yeah. I'm actually wondering, Jason, presumably you've got a better working voice than I do at the moment. Do you want to talk to Stephen about this? What I was essentially thinking is Stephen could give a very rough idea of, well, I'm not sure even Stephen really needs to specify anything, but what we need to show is a Composr script that just outputs JSON data. So it might be a script in the data directory, for example, that's all the standard Bootstrap code, but just outputs some JSON rather than, obviously outputting a normal web page like the normal Composr requests would do. or maybe I should just do it. I'm probably putting Jason on the spot over here. I will try and do it, but I need to get a drink of water, so I'll just be 1 sec. And
Okay.
I'm going to try and minimize how much talking I can do. So if people can kind of narrate what I'm doing, or maybe I can type a bit, we'll get through it. So just bear with me 1 moment, and I'll be back.
All right.
Could someone give me a heads up where I can take a look at this proposed design? I've been searching around, could not find it.
Sure. I'll send you the link to the image. It's just a screenshot that we've been looking at. There it is in the text chat.
Is the entire presentation public somewhere? That for the new design?
There was a PowerPoint presentation that Chris put out a while ago. I'm not sure if it has the specific screenshot that we're looking at in it. It would be in one of the older community chat forum posts on the Composr website, so I can take a look and see if I can find that.
What are we looking for? Maybe I can help.
Salman was asking if there was a presentation available about the new design, which I was telling him that it doesn't have the screenshot, but you had put out that PowerPoint a while ago.
Okay, there is actually another presentation that I might not have made public, and I don't think there's any reason I can't, so I'll probably put that public tomorrow. And Salman, I can certainly send it to you directly.
Yeah, I remember, but I think I looked through the Skype chat but couldn't find it.
Okay, I'll send it your way. Okay, so I have some voice back. I've got some water. I'm going to share my screen. Stephen, you're still with us, right?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Cool. So I'm just going to program up a script that will output some JSON, just to give you a rough idea how it could work. Okay, so I'm just going to think how I'm going to do this. I'll probably do it on my local test machine. Move my editor over. Okay, so this is just a simple editor running on a Composr site, and normally when Composr runs, it effectively is launching index.php from a particular zone, so some index.php bar, and that will basically initiate Composr to output a page, and that will be HTML, but there's no reason we can't have other scripts that output other data. So if I create a new file in data custom, or here we go. Sample.php. Output some data. So I'll just start really simple. I'll just write some pure PHP without using Composr at all. And I'll just define a data structure. Okay, so a data structure, an array, and there'll be a list of arrays, and each one can have ID is something, and name is something. Okay, so we have a data structure, and if we want to output JSON in PHP, we just do JSON encode, like that. So if I call this up, okay, so this is JSON data that just came from our PHP data structure. So obviously right now this isn't integrated into Composr whatsoever, because it's just a static, well, not static, an integrated PHP script. So to make it run from the Composr API, I basically just need to put a code on top of it. So I'm going to open up execute temp, which is standard shell that we use. I just put that stuff on top, just very standard copy and paste code that initiates Composr. And if I refresh, it shouldn't make any difference at all. It hasn't, but I know Composr is running at this point in the code. So now let's change it to some kind of data that's based on Composr, just to show that it's working. So let's do a dump up with some information about some members on the site. So I'm going to do a query. Members is So global site-db is an instance of the site database object, which I can run a query on. So do query select on there. Well, I want to do from DB actually because I'm getting members. Then select from the members table. I'm going to select all fields. Okay. I'm going to create a data array. I'm going to loop through members. Each item of members is in a variable member, which will be an array representing that database record. And then I'm going to append the data with an ID or maybe member ID and username, which is given the same as the username field. That should work. Yeah, there we go. So we have JSON data coming out of a very simple script. We load the Composr API, we do a simple query, and we build up a data structure, and we use JSON code to make it JSON. That's it. Does that make sense, Steve?
Yeah, that makes sense. It's been a long while since I've done PHP, so.
Cool. So in terms of getting data into Composr, you could do something very similar. You could just post data into a script like this and do something with it. So I have a PHP extension. Just bear with me. Sorry, a Google Chrome extension, not a PHP extension. Arc. Okay, so this Arc extension for Chrome is quite useful for simulating requests. You can just install it from the Chrome extension store, or whatever they call it. So if I want to call localhost, Composr, data custom, sample.php, and I can get a post call. I'm going to send it. Let's say I'm going to send JSON to it. We're talking JSON, and I'll just write some really simple stuff, very similar to what I was outputting in Composr earlier. I'm going to send that through to the script, and we'll see what happens. And obviously, it doesn't do anything with it because the code I ran doesn't touch the input. But we can edit that code and make it touch the input. So let's just get rid of this. I could make it simply echo the input back. So echo file get contents. This is in line with what I said on the forum topic, Stephen, PHP way of accessing input. I think it's PHP colon/its input like that. Yeah, so that's just echoing the JSON back. It's not actually passing the JSON. But if I do data is that, and then, or maybe data is JSON decode that. Send true to JSON decode too, because I like to get it in array format rather than object format. That's what that true does. And then if I do var dump data, that's going to show the past data back. No, it's not. It's going to fail. Probably because my JSON is wrong. Yeah. So it's a list. Object. Maybe I shouldn't have had that. Anyone notices anything wrong with my JSON or knows why it's not working? Please tell me. Otherwise, I'm just going to try and debug it.
I think valid JSON uses double quotes around the property names.
Oh,
and
yeah, maybe that's it. You mean that? Or do you mean I have to actually do like that too? That works. Ah, there we go. Okay, so PHP's passed the JSON, and I've just dumped it out. So there we go. We've got input and output working with JSON data. Fairly straightforward. still with us, Stephen?
Yeah, I'm still with you.
So, any questions? I'm not sure I can take it much further unless we're actually doing a practical integration, but I think I've shown you the fundamentals.
The only other thing would be to send that data now to a catalog within Composr, so that we can then display it on the website.
Right. Okay. So you probably wouldn't want to send it to a catalog. You probably want to just send it to a page that would. Well, okay. Can you give me the use case? So what would the data be in this case? Would it be high scores or something?
Yeah, let's go with high scores because that's one of the ones I want to do pretty soon.
So the server is sending high score information to Composr as a one-off. So it's saying, I'm going to update this web server with the latest high scores. And then the web server should save it. And then whenever anyone visits the web page, it should display it. Is that what you want?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so we probably don't want to put it into a catalog because it's a bit overcomplicated. We probably want to just make a... well, I'll tell you what I'd do. I'd just shove it in a file. And I'd just make a page that reads that file. Okay. So we have a sample.php which receives data, which we know works. Let's just change this code a bit so that it is writing the data into a file. I'll put it in sample.json. I'll leave these here so it will still dump our data back to us, but in the middle we'll save the data into a file. So let's see if that works. Ignore that error, that's just my development machine. So that did work. If I look for sample.json, there we go. Okay, so now I just need to make a page that shows the contents of sample.json in a table. So our sample.php is taking the data and saving it. So that would be called Unity. And then I'll just create a very quick mini module that will show the data we've saved. So I'm creating a mini module into the site zone. And I'll just call this sample too. Because it's a mini module, Composr was already booted by the time this code runs, so I don't need the initialization code. Okay, so I've got a path to the data. I'm going to get the data variable to contain the data, so that's going to have target contents on that path. And then I'm just going to really quickly have a table, visual table here. So each data is row. This is super sloppy and quick. It's actually row ID, isn't it? And row name, and I better at least make it secure, so I'll call escape HTML around it. Okay, so I'm outputting a dynamic HTML table here. So we'll have I'm not going to bother with a property here, I'll just dump it. Use th shares. The first column is ID, second column is name. Got to close off my row. That should work. So I'm calling a page in the site zone. Based on the file name. Site zone doesn't have guest access, so I have to log in. And there we go, we have a very simple table. So, Steve, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I'm guessing you're recording the video feed from this?
Yeah, it's going to go up on YouTube.
Cool. That should get me started, definitely. Thank you.
Okay. Back to you, Jacob.
All right. Does anyone else have things they're trying to do with Composr or questions they have for Chris or anyone else this week? All right, not hearing anything. It's been almost an hour, so we can go ahead and start wrapping things up. I think, Chris, did you want to talk about what we're doing with these chats today?
Yeah, I actually think we should not schedule another chat yet because I don't know when my voice is going to get better. Plus, I wanted to talk a bit about the format. So my opinion is we should make the community chats, let's say once every 2 months. That's just an example, but really when we've got something concrete to talk about, because I don't think we can keep thinking of agenda topics week in, week out. And then just every week every week once my voice is back, I do a programming feed where we'll probably start working on the achievement system as an add-on for Composr 10. And I'll just stream myself programming, but I keep IRC open. And then anyone can chime into IRC with questions, and then I can drop out of what I'm doing and cover that stuff. Or maybe people want to help me code the achievement system or whatever I'm working on. So it can be quite collaborative. So I'm thinking that would be the typical live chat going forward. It would be more of a me doing a stream, and then every 2 months or so we'll do a live chat with this kind of format. Everyone agree with that? Does that make sense? Are people going to get bored if I'm just doing programming?
They could have it out in the background, right?
They could, yeah. They can all have a spare screen dedicated to just me. Okay.
All right. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we can wrap it up, Jacob. Right?
Okay. Well, yeah, thanks everyone for attending, and this was probably our most attended week. So, Chris, whatever you did this week to get so many people in, good job. Thanks for everyone to showing up. Yeah, so we will post to the Composr forums, I assume, next time that we're going to do this.
Yeah.
That's it, right, Chris?
Yep. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you, everyone. Great to see you all here. Great to chat about the new site design, and great to do some practical coding for Stephen. It was good. Other than my voice breaking, doesn't really matter that much to me. Had a fun time. So thanks, everyone.
Cheers, Chris.
Cheers.
Bye, everybody.
See you guys.
Bye.
There you go.
Bye.